Hi everyone, and welcome to my channel where I talk about movies. And today I'm going to start a mini series on three films that starred Bette Davis at the height of her career. So these will include The Letter from 1940, and it will include The Little Foxes from 1941. We're going to start out today with Jezebel from 1938. And all three of these films were directed by Wiliam Wyler, who certainly Bette Davis fell in love with, and she thought he was the greatest director that she had ever worked with. And I read Bette Davis' biography by Barbara Lemming, and there's a good bit of stuff here about in this book that describes her relationship with Wyler, both mostly on set, off set. They did have a romance during Jezebel. And Betty, I'm not going to talk too much about the about the turbulent life of Bette Davis. We're going to pretty much stick to her career. And Jezebel is really a story of really an example, a magnificent example of studio filmmaking in the height of the golden age of Hollywood. We see that in the very first shot with this absolutely breathtaking tracking shot through an imaginary New Orleans. This is 1852, 8 years before the Civil War. Yes, 9 years. It's hustle and it's bustle, and the way it's set up. You can see the money. Warner Brothers, where Bette Davis was the contract player, you could see the sheer artistry on every level in the studio system. That was really one of the strengths of the studio system, is that the technical skills was amazing. And the costumes. This is a movie about costumes. in two scenes, a party scene and a ball, Bette Davis goes to both of them in an inappropriate dress. And this is very much a part of the code of the South, the code of the New Orleans upper elite society. And then we get in these great set designs. I mean, they're just magnificent. Architects, architects that could build fantastic houses are building these sets. Bette Davis is playing a character called Julie. She is one of the most popular young women in her social set. She's very lively, but she's also very manipulative and rebellious, and she wants to flaunt conventions. She plays with her men. She's engaged to Henry Fonda in this film, and they've known each other for many years, and there's implication they've been engaged before, so we know this has been a rocky relationship. And all her rebelliousness, her flaunting of convention, comes to fore in this incredible scene, one of the great scenes of the Hollywood studio system, which is the Olympus Ball, the great ball, yearly ball in New Orleans, where all the women are meant to wear white. And Bette Davis, Julie, wants to wear a red dress. She's going to show them that she can do it. She can pull that off, of course, to the utter consternation of her fiancé, played by Henry Fonda. And when she comes to the ball, she is totally estranged from everybody. Everybody moves away from her. This is a society of strict codes and a certain way of life that they believe in. The rules of the game have to be followed. Then we move on. There's sort of like this is sort of like a two-part movie. So we get 1852, and then we get a year later, 1853, where Julie is still licking her wounds from a year earlier. She's not the belle of the ball anymore. She's not the life of the party. She's living in virtual seclusion in this fantastic halcyon plantation that is outside of New Orleans. And The second half of the movie is about yellow fever. So yellow fever grips New Orleans, but at their plantation, they're supposedly safer because they're above the sea level, because New Orleans is right at the sea level. And again, we get just great set design, the house, the staircases. It's really magnificent. But this is a vehicle for Bette Davis. This is a woman's picture. The focus is always going to be on her, and she is fantastic. She is breathtakingly fantastic in this movie. The range of emotions that she has to feel. Should we feel some sympathy for Julie? She is indeed a Jezebel. She's a rebel. And at this point in her career, let's just give a short introduction to where Bette Davis was in Jezebel. She had been a stage actress, a promising stage actress. She really had no desire to become a movie star, but Warner Brothers did sign her to a contract, and which she was there for, I don't know, I guess 15, 20, almost 20 years maybe. A tempestuous affair with Jack Warner, relationship with Jack Warner, because as Julie is rebellious, so is Bette Davis. And as she got more famous and more acclaimed, she wanted to pick her own roles, which was taboo at Warner Brothers. So she got into movies. She first got noticed in Human Bondage, or Of Human Bondage. That was 1934, so 4 years before Jezebel. A movie with Leslie Howard, and she got great notices. And and Jack Warner had loaned her out to RKO, and he was just so befuddled. He said, "Boy, she finally makes a name for herself, and she does it for a different studio." But she wasn't even nominated for an Academy Award for that film. A much lesser film, Dangerous. A couple of years later, she does win the Academy Award. One of those famous makeup Oscars. So now William Wyler comes along to direct Jezebel. Now Wyler was associated with the Samuel Goldwyn Studios, so this was made at Warner Brothers, but Wyler had a very significant reputation here as a quality. He made quality films and with great performances. So when he and Davis got together on this film, he wanted to temper down. He thought that she overacted, that that she was too obvious, and Bette Davis had studied dance with Martha Stewart. This was the days of Isabella or Isadora Duncan, so very dramatic movements. She was great at it, and she knew she was great at it. And not just her movement as far as through space, but also the way she moved her arms, her hands. She was always using her hands to affect her head, her sharp head movements. And of course, her Bette Davis eyes. And boy, you could watch this movie, just look at Bette Davis's eyes in scene after scene, because this isn't a long movie. I think it's only about 105 minutes. And there's just one great scene after another, especially tailored for Bette Davis. So Wyler tried to rein her in, play the character. Don't play all this out. Bette Davis wanted to play characters like from the outside in. Wyler wanted her to play the character from the inside out. Be the character. So he tempers down what he saw as her affectations, her overacting. And but even though they are tempered down, we still get them. I mean, Wyler is using them to their greatest effect because they're not overwhelming the story. You see that especially in some of the scenes with Henry Fonda, who was a different kind of actor. He was the actor that he was sort of was the character. He had a sense of being of the character, whereas you could see and to great effect, that Bette Davis is acting. She's giving us a performance. With Henry Fonda, his strength was you never really feel he's giving a performance. And that is a really interesting contrast in this movie. As far as, and then the yellow fever takes over, so we get, so the film is heading towards some sort of tragedy. The film very much, it precedes Gone with the Wind by 1 year. But Margaret Mitchell's novel had been a huge bestseller. It was great anticipation for Gone with the Wind. It's often said that this was, Jezebel was a sort of a movie to give to Bette Davis because she didn't get to play Scarlett O'Hara, but she was never, according to Barbara Lemming's book, she was never, Warner Brothers would have never let her out. She was not in that plans, but now she gets the jump. This movie gets the jump. This is like the previews of coming attractions, because there is some similarity between Scarlett O'Hara and Julie in this film, and it plays up some of the same concepts of Gone with the Wind. Where in the 1930s, this was very big, the lost cause, the nostalgia for the antebellum, before the Civil War era. And that it reached its acme with Gone with the Wind. And, it was such a great way of life, and look at how it's passing away. It's basically a feudal way of life that was built on slavery. And there's lots of slaves in this movie. Wyler does not, and some of them are really good. Lou Payton plays Uncle Cato. He's the all-purpose butler with a great deal of dignity. Later on in the film, these slaves are, depicted as Hollywood depicts slavery in the 1930s as doesn't look so bad. At one point out on the plantation, the whole slave colony comes to serenade Miss Julie. And part of that is Eddie Anderson, who played Rochester in the Jack Benny shows. And he's willing to risk his life for his mistress. And he's very good, but you're not, the voice that he uses as Rochester is not his real voice. In Jezebel, he uses his real voice. So, and also this idea of chivalry, there's two duels, not one, but two duels in this movie. And Henry Fonda is very good, as I said, in his interactions with Bette Davis, but he was not a star yet. This is before the Ford films, Drums Along the Mohawk and Grapes of Wrath and Young Mr. Lincoln, that made him a really superstar. But you can see it here. And Bette Davis won the Academy Award for this film. And Faye Bainter, who plays Julie's aunt, she also wins an Academy Award. She is just great here. George Brent is here in a very lively performance as sort of one of the two men, or the other man that Julie plays off of Henry Fonda character. So, and it's a great screenplay as well. And John Huston was one of the architects of the screenplay. Well, he came on to, I guess eventually he writes the dialogue, some of the male dialogue in it that he was so well, so very adept at. And it was adopted from a play, a Broadway play that Warner Brothers bought, but it turned out to be a failure. And Julie was played by Miriam Hopkins in the stage production. Franz Waxman's incredible score. He would go on to shoot to score Gone with the Wind. The cinematographer was Ernest Haller. He would also go on to Gone with the Wind. I think both of them won the Academy Awards for that movie. Um, and so we have a great conglomeration of talent here, and it's a good start, I think, to the to this series, because this is the Wyler influence on Bette Davis. I can only imagine what this film was like for audiences in 1938. Davis had already become a star. And we had one contemporaneous review in the New York Times. Frank Nugent was the film critic for the New York Times in the 1930s. Very good critic. He would go to Hollywood and become a screenwriter. He wrote many screenplays for John Ford, the Ford Apache, and She Wore a Yellow Ribbon. He wrote the screenplay for The Searchers. And he said in his review, he acknowledges, the Southern plantation, this nostalgia that's gripping the nation because of Gone with the Wind, and we're getting, this is going to be the gateway to see the massive color extravaganza of Gone with the Wind. And by the way, I haven't mentioned that this was a black and white movie. So in the ballroom scene, when Julie comes in her red dress, it looks black to us. It's really kind of strange that they wouldn't have made this in color. But the effect, unbelievably enough, is the same. We actually see this red dress because all the other women are dressed in white, the proper white of this social class and for this fancy ballroom. There's also, this is an old DVD, but this is available on Blu-ray. This edition features a commentary by Jean Bassinger, and boy, it's really good. I mean, she really covers all the ground. She analyzes many of the scenes. So I think it's a good start. I've seen this film many times, but not for a long time, and I was just astounded. Of course, when you read a book about a film star, and you know all the background, and you see all the elements of Bette Davis's life and what led up to Jezebel, and then you see her, and you're still not prepared because she is magnificent in this film. Okay, so next up will be The Letter. I'm going to read the short story later on today. I found it in a W. Somerset Maugham, who also wrote Of Human Bondage, story collection. So The Letter was a play, but Somerset Maugham based it on a short story that he had written. Okay, so thanks a lot for everybody who listened. I do appreciate it. Comments are welcome. Take care.